So very good afternoon to everyone here. It's 2:30, just after your lunch, I suppose. So I'll try my very best to keep you very awake. And you won't fall asleep for good reason, because we have here with us co-chair of the forum and also chairman and CEO of Johnson Controls. And I present you Mr. Alex Molinaroli.
Very good, yeah.
There you go.
How are you doing?
Right. As you know, we have a 30-minute session, so I'll try to keep it efficient so that we will have a little bit of time to interact with the audience. I'll leave about, say, 10 minutes of that. I think that's generous. Yeah. So if you have any questions or whatsoever, please feel free to raise your hands, and I'll try to get to you. So, Alex, you joined the company for 34 years.
Yes.
Back in 1983, and rose through different layers of responsibility, and today you're the CEO and chairman of JCI. What were some of the key milestones that you would describe, for the company throughout these years? And in particular, 4 years ago, you also became the CEO and made, I think, quite tectonic shifts in the company going forward. What made you make these decisions, and how do you arrive at them?
Yeah. So I appreciate the opportunity. So this could be cathartic. So it was actually June 13th, 1983. So when you remember the date that you were hired, it just tells you a little bit how connected you are with, with the company. And when I started with the company, I started as a salesperson in a local branch office selling our control products. And at the time, we were less than a couple $2 billion in sales, and we were in the buildings business, and I was a sales engineer, a graduate engineer. And if you just kind of wind through my career, which you don't have time to hear all that, and it's probably too late in the day, but if you go through my career, what the couple of events that I would say that were notable for me is that at one point in my career, I ran sales for the company, at least for what was called the controls group at that time. And every day that we'd have a customer come in, I would stand in front of the customer, and we had this presentation. It was a beautiful room like this, and we'd stand in front of the customer, and the first thing we'd say is, this company has 63 years of consecutive dividends and 45 years of consecutive years of growth. I remember that was the slide. And the next year it was 64 years and 46 years of consecutive growth. And that stuck in my head, because I can remember making that presentation. I can remember saying, gosh, I hope I'm not the one that stops this, well, forget the dividends, the growth of the company. And so you get caught in this mindset that you have to continue doing what you're doing and do more of it, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And so if you fast forward probably 15 years from there, I end up as vice chairman of the company, and we're setting the strategy for the company for the next generation. And it was very clear to me that we couldn't continue on the path that we were on, that the path that we were on of incrementally growing every year was not sustainable. The business models that we had were good. I mean, we were a great company, but things needed to change in order to have a platform. Because the other thing to remember is this company was born in 1885. And so the responsibility you have as a CEO is that you want to make sure that this company is set up for the future. I mean, your perspective changes immediately. It changes from, what can you do in the job to how are you going to set the company up for the future. And for me, it was very clear that we needed to simplify our business, and we needed to essentially get out of a piece of our business because we were constraining it. We became a very large player in the automotive space. And it's such a large player, it was so successful that it actually started taking resources from what was the core of the company, which was our buildings business and also our battery business. And so I presented this to the board of directors, and it would have been July, so it would have been 4 years ago in July.
That was just when you just became the CEO.
It was actually 3 months before I became the CEO, but it was, the transition was announced. And we talked about the fact that we needed to simplify the business, and that the plans that, very specifically, the plans that the automotive group had and the requirements for investments were such that it was going to take away from the rest of the company. And so we went on this journey to simplify the company. So one of the things that, to also give you context about the company, at that time we were probably around $40 billion in revenues and 170,000 employees. And in order for us to make that change, I was the 9th CEO of the company, and do the math, 130-year-old company. And so when you think about that, having someone come from the outside to make those kind of changes would be very, very difficult in our culture. Having someone do that from the inside, somebody that had been with the company now 34 years, was a little more palatable. And, you know, because how could someone that started with the company and worked for 34 years do anything but try to do what's the right thing for the company? Because you become, you know, invested in employees, they're your friends, they're people, they're your colleagues that you grow up with. And so we set on a journey to, you know, to simplify and change the direction of the company. Culminated, and we had many divestitures and a couple acquisitions and partnerships, but culminated this year, we spun off the automotive group in November, and 3 months prior to that, we merged with a company called Tyco, which was in the fire alarm and security businesses, which really solidified our position around technologies and buildings. So, you know, a tremendous amount of change. I really hand to our employees that they've been willing to stick with this. But as we've gone through this whole process, we've come out of this, I think, with a much tighter focus around where we want to be in the future. So I feel good about the future.
Right. Well, I'm going to come back to this question a little bit later, but, you know, I think, you know, to cut from 170,000 employees to, I think your current number is about 120,000.
120.
That's a good 50,000 staff to let go. That must have been really difficult, you know, both on a personal as well as a business level. I'll come back to this question a little bit later, but I do want to just also, you know, mention that today your sales revenue is in the region of about $37 billion. Am I right?
That's right, yep, and Asia Pacific, yep.
Yeah, and you have 2,000 worldwide locations, and you do business in about 150 countries. With almost 9,000 employees in China. And as your next step, I understand that, you know, your vision is to really engage with the emerging markets and to really, you know, put a regional headquarters in this part of the world. And I understand that last week you just opened your Shanghai regional headquarters itself. Right. So congratulations.
We brought a picture, yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, so this is our baby.
So tell us a little bit about this next step, because I don't think that this is just simply just another building, another regional headquarters, but it really signifies, you know, the next phase of growth and the kind of industries that you're, that's symbolic of that, right?
That's right.
So, you know, could you describe a little bit about this initiative and this building itself, and what are some of your plans in China? Since we're in China, I believe there'll be many, you know, people who are interested.
Yeah, so you should come visit us in Shanghai if you get a chance. It's a beautiful building. I'll talk a little bit about the building, but I just want to make sure that you understand. So as we were going through this entire process separately, it was also very clear to me, and I think to our entire company, that we had had success in Asia, we had had success in China. In fact, a lot of our success was in our automotive business. But that success, you know, what we had done in order to get to the point we were at, which was pretty successful actually, was not going to help us in the future. And it also, you know, the numbers, everyone knows the numbers, but the numbers just speak to themselves. And if, remember 1885, remember 9 CEOs, remember legacy, if you think about that, in order for us to be successful in the future, it was very clear that we needed to shift our center of the world, or at least have 2 centers of the world, one being in Asia Pacific, specifically in Shanghai, where we, you know, this ended up being a statement, but where we could not just have a strong business, but we could have a strong business center. And so what this represents, first off, it's the most energy efficient building we have in our entire portfolio.
How efficient is it?
Well, it's 45% less energy usage and 42% water usage, less water usage than a benchmark building for the same type of purposes. It's a China 3-star, Edge Design, Platinum LEED certified building. It's got our energy storage capabilities here. It's got solar capabilities on the roof, and of course, it's got every gadget that we make inside the building, and that's for a bunch of reasons. One is if it's such a good idea, we should do it ourselves, and second, it's an opportunity for us to bring customers in the region and help them as they're wrestling with some of the same issues and show them some technologies that work. So it's not make-believe, it's real, it really works. It's a beautiful building. Also has a huge area where you can collaborate with ourselves and our partners, and it's very open, which I think speaks to our culture. And so it's as we were talking earlier, it means a lot. I think a lot of it also means something to our employees, because there's one thing to talk about how important the region is, but when you do something like this, it really means a lot more. When you pull your wallet out and you really make an investment, it says much more than posters, and I think our employees really understand how serious we are. So.
Right. So when I look at that building, I think it's a little bit different from this one. So if you look at that, it seems to be surrounded by openness, but also a lot of greens. Mm-hmm. And also, I kept looking at it and wondering if from a bird's eye view, it would look like a leaf, and therefore it's a bit of a building in a garden. I say that also because coming from Singapore, we've always wanted to develop the country as a city in the garden itself, because that means we are part of the entire ecosystem, the entire universe, and not just, one that's thriving for its own good, but to really, do much more for everyone else. Is that the same philosophy that you would have in your business?
Well, absolutely. If you think of our success in this region, it's all been through partnerships. Everything that we've done that's been successful has had a partner of some sort. I mean, they're different shapes and sizes and makes, different business models than what we have in North America and what we have in Europe. And when we're successful, we're able to adapt ourselves to the environment that we're in, and not only be a part of the environment, but make it better, complement it. And our employees embrace that, because you think about our employees, regardless of where they are, particularly our new employees, the millennials that are a part of our organization, really identify with the fact that we're willing to make the right type of investment, and that the type of company that we are, speaks to more than just one bottom line. There's all sorts of bottom lines, and it's really that nice. It's very nice.
I can see the smile. Means that you're really proud of this, and that's good news. Well, I have a question about technology. Mm-hmm. Especially in this forum itself, we see a lot about AIs. We see a lot about neuroscience and all sorts of technology that's coming up. And obviously, I think all of us in this room are here to chase technology and use them, right? Mm-hmm. But there is a segment of the population that is somewhat unwittingly left out, because it is just not something which they could attune themselves to easily, right? Mm-hmm. How do you make equipment or technology available for this group of consumers in the market? Yeah. I know that even though you're very much in the B2B business, but it concerns the human being on the ground ultimately.
Well,
so how do you make it relevant to them?
Yeah, this subject's come up a couple times in the last couple days, and I actually see it different. I think we're in a position today where you still have to interface with your technology. I think that's going to disappear. I think very quickly. I mean, you think about some of the technology that's showing up in homes. You think about Amazon back in North America with Alexa and Siri, and I mean it's going to get to a place where your interface with technology will be ubiquitous. It's not going to be something that you have to work at. It's something that's just going to happen. And so I actually think that it'll be more inclusive. And as we talk about, there's a lot of talk about the forums conversation here around inclusive. Of all the things that we're trying to accomplish, and I actually believe that a connected world, and one where technology is ubiquitous, I think it will bring all of us along. There will be winners, and there will be people that are going to be dislocated. But I think generally it's going to be much better for all mankind. I think we do have to worry in the short run around the dislocation, for many people, and so we can't ignore that. But I do think that overall, even the worst of us is going to be so much better than we were in the past. And then when I say the past, I mean the most recent past.
So on the subject of dislocation itself, I go back to the question about the staff that you have to let go. So where there are dislocation, whether it's of the direct staff or other external stakeholders, how do you try to help them? Do you? Does JCI try to help them as well?
Yeah, so let me make sure you understand exactly. So of the 170,000 employees, there's probably 5,000 or so employees that probably lost their job. The rest of them are working for another company. And so, the hardest part for me was every time that we spun off our automotive group into a separate company. And, the day that we made that decision, I went to their headquarters, I announced it, I stood there with all these folks that were my colleagues for decades.
That's right.
And told them that basically, from their perspective, we didn't want them anymore. I think they're pretty happy right now. Their stock's doing really well, the company's doing really well. But I think at that time, that was a tough message to deliver. But, I delivered it face to face, and I think it created opportunities. What we ended up creating was just opportunity for growth and leadership, and now they're able to make the kinds of investments that we wouldn't make. And so a big part of this is making sure that you communicate. Not everybody ended up in a better place, but many, many people ended up in a better place, in a better situation than not necessarily where they were, but where they would have been. And I think that there's a real burden on making sure that you don't duck that responsibility, that you face it, and make sure people understand the consequences of inaction, not just the consequences of action.
Right. I'd like to get to know Mr. Alex Molinaroli much better.
Yeah.
Right. So please allow me to ask you questions that are a little bit more personal, right? But it relates to business side of things too. The thing is, as you've pointed out, many of these are colleagues that you have worked with over the years. And because you've been with JCI for 34 years, so obviously you would also build certain relationships with them. Letting them go or allowing them to be working outside the company itself would, in my opinion, certainly evoke certain emotions or feelings. And similarly, when you let go of a part of the business itself, whether it's a cell or something, it would also mean letting go of an arm or a leg or something, right? So there would be emotions involved. How do you deal with that? Especially during times in your career, 34 years, where you could be misunderstood, and there are certain things that you can or cannot say. You've got your constraints for business reasons that you cannot quite, or you get misunderstood. How do you deal with that personally? Because the reason I'm very interested in this question is because I think all leaders face such situations all the time. And sometimes, we are not able to pull ourselves out of the emotions or to detach ourselves from it. And as a result, we may make decisions that we ultimately regret, right? And sometimes it's also about wise decision rather than right or wrong decisions. How do you keep a clear head amidst all the noise? And in particular, last year, I think even the political voices got involved, and that must have been quite difficult.
Yeah. So I think if somebody had asked me 5 years ago and said, here's all the headlines and here's everything that you're going to have to deal with, and I mean everything from some of our employees' pensions, to relationships that are broken, to strategies that were misunderstood, and people that believe that they don't know what I know, like you said, and so they see different set of choices, and they don't understand the choices.
Or they just see from the headlines.
That's all they know. That's really what they know. And I think what happens is, and it takes a while, it's like boiling a frog, I guess, and I'm the frog. Over a period of time, what you get to a place, especially today with social media and the media itself, is you get to a place where you say, you know what? Do you feel like you're doing the best that you can? Do you feel like you're making decisions you made for the right reasons, it's coming from the right place, and you recognize that you can't make everyone happy. You just stop trying, because that once you get to that place, you still don't want to read the headlines. You just don't read the newspaper. It becomes something that's more about in your heart, and you understand the choices that you have, and can you how do you feel about that? Do you really feel like that you've done something that's right for the organization, right for the shareholders, right for our customers, based off the choices that you have, knowing that you make mistakes, and just like all of us, you learn to deal with that. But I do think that in the 34 years, there's a lot of relationships that I had. Some are broken because of the things that have happened, and that's unfortunate. But I guess they pay me well, and they ask me to do a job. You just don't realize when you get into the job exactly some of the things that you'll be faced with.
Right. Well, I mean, hindsight is always perfect vision, right? But at that point in time, how do you know what is right? Because you mentioned that you feel that it's right. How do you know that for sure?
Well, you do the best you can. I don't know that. I mean, if I look back at it, and if I said that I made all the right decisions, that wouldn't be. I wouldn't say that I know that I did. I know that I didn't. But I think at the time, with the information that you have, understand the consequences of not acting, which was really what I was dealing with. Was something that was symptomatic of things that we had put off. That tomorrow we'll deal with it tomorrow, and I really got to a place where I understood that we're going to be better. I may not have made all the right choices, but I know that I made some choices that needed to be made.
Was there anything that you really think you should have done in another way?
Oh, how much time do you have? I think communication. I mean, I think that if there was just a way to communicate more effectively, because there was so much change that happened so fast, that I think our employees' heads were spinning, and it looked chaotic from the inside. And there was a plan. I think looking back on it, people can understand, but I think being in the middle of it, it was incredibly chaotic. And if there was a more effective way to communicate, I put that burden on myself, then that's probably something I could have done better.
Right, I think many of us would make that mistake because, when we want change as a leader, very quickly we could see it, but we forgot that others may not be able to see the same vision. At this point, I'd like to open up to the audience. And also, if you have a question, please raise your hands. The mic is standing by right there. And please let us know where you're from, and keep your questions short. Don't make a statement or a non-statement, but, ask the questions that you think, would be relevant. Anyone? Okay, brave man, the first brave man. Yes.
Mark Spellman, what do you think are going to be your 2 or 3 biggest challenges over the next 2 years?
The three challenges for the next 3 years. Is that what you said? Yeah.
3 challenges, just overall. Okay. So if I took internally, make this internally, I mean, the first thing is that it's one thing to spin off a company, because it's a lot of work. You get organized and you spin it off, and then they're gone. So then it becomes easy. They're not here anymore, so you don't have to worry about it. Now, when you merge with another company, that's a different story. And so we're currently going through our merger and integration with Tyco, and that's number one. I mean, being able to bring 2 cultures together and be successful is the most important thing that we need to do. So that's number one by a long shot. Number 2, I think about the market opportunity. Back to our Asia. It's just really important, I think, for us to be able to, and this is an internal problem too, is for us to be able to get past, use our experiences, but don't allow our experiences to get in the way of us being able to be successful. And what I mean by that is the market is incredibly dynamic here, and I don't believe that we can operate we're not operating at the pace that's required in order for us to be successful. And it's not that people aren't running really fast. I just think that we have some experiences that we need to add. And then I think the last is technology. I mean, technology is going to move so fast. The cycles, the technology cycles are moving so much quicker than we've been able to adapt to. And they're going to just move so much quicker. And we're going to have to pick, get much more specific around what we're going to do and what we're not going to do. And which is amazing because I've gone through this portfolio reshaping, and I really think we're still too broad. Because in order for us to be successful, we're going to have to tighten up what parts of the technology are going to be most important, what markets are we going to participate in, and we got to get really good at it. So that's three. There's three big ones though. So.
Yeah. Okay, we've got a gentleman over there.
Hello. Yeah,
Right.
my question is, as a big company with a long history, how could you balance maintaining your cultural value at the same time to catch up on the fast-changing economy and the technology and the market?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think there's anything that gives me a knot in my stomach is when I see what I think is the positive parts of our culture eroding because of change. And I don't know the answer to that, but because I think we have to find a way to maintain our culture, the positive parts of our culture, while embracing change. So our culture needs to change, but it shouldn't have to happen to us. It's something that we should be engaged with. But as I think about our company, we're headquartered in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I don't know if anybody even knows where Milwaukee, Wisconsin is, but if you know where Milwaukee, Wisconsin is, it's the Midwest part of the United States, and there's something about being a Midwest company. And if you show up in Shanghai or Singapore or Brussels or Cork, Ireland, what you're going to find is a Midwest company. It's pretty phenomenal. And I actually think there's something really not just charming about that, but there's a lot of trust in relationships. There's a humbleness that kind of comes with the organization that I think we don't want to lose. But I think we also need to be better at accepting new ideas and new people. So I'd like to see the culture change a bit, but it also maintain the fabric of the culture. And it's an ongoing process. It's the thing that probably gets my stomach turning more than just about anything else. It probably is a burden of the 34 years that I carry with me.
Right. We only have time for, say, one question. Do we have any hands that's up? Anyone else? Otherwise, you could ask it together. Keep your question short, and we'll try to give him more time.
Obviously, we're entering into a situation now, especially with the 2025, I would say, manufacturing industrial policy in China. Companies like yours have enjoyed a tailwind here in, I would say, in the Asian world over the last 30 years.
Yeah.
How do you look at that going forward? Do you look at it as a threat or opportunity for your business?
Yes, so I think it's going to change. I think 20 years ago, the strategy was build a factory. That was the strategy. That was the strategy. You build a factory, and you could be successful because the market would come to you, and it was very successful. And a lot of people built great brands that way. I think the strategy today has got a lot more nuanced, and I think that you have to be local. You have to be in the market, and you have to be focused. And if you think about the emerging middle class that's happening, you think about the urbanization that's happening, let's talk about China, more here than anywhere else, it fits the products and services we have. However, it's not going to come to us. Our competitors, particularly the local competitors, are so much more capable than they were 20 years ago. And in order for us to be successful, we're going to have to challenge ourselves to do things differently, be much more sharper. And the other thing is, what it'll do for us is success here will probably drive product and innovation that we'll be able to take other places. So the other part about the building and the resources is I think we'll have a shift in the center of where our technology is developed. It'll probably come from Asia and move west instead of the other way around.
So given that, we're already a little bit behind time, my last question, and something that I think some people might want to know is, you are currently the CEO and chairman of JCI, but in a year or so you would step back, pass the baton,
yes,
and become the chairman of JCI for some time.
Right.
What would be the first thing that you want to do on a personal level when you step back? I'm assuming that you will have a little bit more time.
Yes.
And also, what would be your passing baton words to your successor?
Well, first off, I think it comes back to the culture question, because you've got to harness the good of the culture while you change the culture. And I think that's what I would, as we talk to George Oliver, who would be the next CEO of the company, that's what I think is going to be what's most successful. You can't just come in and say we want to do things differently, and when you've got this kind of organization that's been built very organically. And I think this relates to myself. I keep asking myself that. I am so much a part of this company that I think that the real opportunity for me is to be able to go find some time where I'm not thinking about this every day, because it's very hard to find where I end and where the company begins sometimes, and so it's going to be a real opportunity and a challenge for me to do things differently.
Yeah, because I think it's going to be really difficult, but it's also, I do a little bit of meditation and mindfulness, and one of the things is when you let go of something, there'll be new opportunities that come.
Yes.
But it's easier said than done. But
yeah.
I think you're a man who would go out to fulfill what you really believe in, and I wish you all the very best.
Well, thank you.
In the next lap when it happens.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. And thank you, everyone, for being with us today.